You're here because something inside you refuses to settle. Because someone, or maybe several people, didn't choose you, didn't return the energy, the love, the loyalty you offered. And now you're left wondering, why not me? What did I do wrong? What do they have that I don't? Let me tell you something. You are not broken. You are not unworthy. You are simply not yet standing in your full power. This video is not a bandage for your pain. It's a fire. A quiet, ancient fire. Lit by Stoic wisdom and forged in self-discipline, self-respect, and transformation. In the next hour, we're going to dismantle the hidden desperation behind the need to be chosen. We're going to talk about the kind of power that doesn't come from convincing others but from choosing yourself. We'll walk through loneliness, rejection, self-worth, and the subtle art of becoming so centered, so grounded, that the world begins to feel your absence when you're gone. If you've ever been ghosted, ignored, sidelined, or placed second to someone else, then this video is for you. But I promise you this, by the end, you will never beg for someone's affection again, because you'll understand that being chosen is no longer your goal. Being undeniable is. So stay with me to the end. Subscribe if you're ready to build a life rooted in calm strength, in inner power, in the Stoic way of showing up for yourself even when the world turns its back. And like this video if you feel the shift beginning already. Now let's get to work. 1. Break free from the need to be chosen. One of the greatest prisons we live in is this: waiting for someone else to validate us, to choose us, to see us, and finally say, "You're enough." And in the modern world, this prison has gilded bars, social media, dating apps, constant comparisons. It all feeds into the same hollow craving. Please, someone choose. But here's the hard truth, spoken plainly. As long as you crave being chosen, you give away your power. It begins innocently enough. You meet someone. There's interest, connection, maybe even chemistry. But as the dynamic unfolds, you find yourself adjusting, shrinking, contorting just a little. You hesitate to speak your truth. You walk on eggshells. You hide parts of yourself because you're afraid those parts might scare them away. And worst of all, you start measuring your value by how they respond to you. This is not love. This is submission. And it is a betrayal of the self. A Stoic does not wait to be chosen. A Stoic stands tall, calm, grounded, and full of purpose. He knows that the only true validation comes from living in alignment with his own values, not someone else's approval. But let's be honest, breaking free from this need isn't just a mindset shift. It's a battle. Because your biology is working against you. Evolution wired you to seek connection, belonging, status. The rejection stings not just emotionally, but chemically. Your brain reads social exclusion as danger. So of course, being overlooked triggers you. But the problem is not your wiring. It's how you respond to it. It's whether you allow your temporary craving for connection to override your long-term integrity. It's whether you let one person's attention, or lack of it, define your worth. You need to remember something powerful. Every time you beg to be seen, you forget that you already are. You are already whole. You are already worthy, not because someone else says so, but because you breathe, you think, you act, because you wake up every morning with the capacity to grow, to learn, to choose strength over fear. So how do you begin to break this cycle? First, by observing your own behavior with brutal honesty. Are you initiating conversations, hoping to be validated? Are you posting things just to get a reaction? Are you staying in relationships where you're clearly not the priority? Are you twisting your opinions, toning yourself down, making yourself smaller? Every time you do these things, you whisper to the world, I am not enough unless you say I am. That whisper needs to die. The Stoic path is not cold. It's not about rejecting others or pretending you don't care. It's about placing your inner peace above their unpredictable moods. It's about refusing to allow someone else's interest or disinterest to dictate the way you see yourself. You must become a guardian of your own worth. You must become the gatekeeper of your own soul. Because no matter how badly you want to be chosen, the moment you chase is the moment you lose leverage. And this is not just about dating or relationships. This applies to friendships, jobs, social groups. The need to be chosen infects every aspect of life. It creeps in subtly when you take on extra work just to be liked, when you stay silent in a room just to avoid tension, when you laugh at jokes you don't find funny just to blend in. But let me ask you, what is the cost of that kind of belonging? Because it's not real belonging. It's performance. And you deserve better than to live as a watered-down version of yourself. You want real power? Then be willing to walk away. Be willing to be misunderstood. Be willing to be alone with your principles, rather than surrounded by people who don't truly see you. The moment you stop performing, the moment you stop craving to be picked, you create space for something else. Respect. And respect, unrespect, unlike attention, is earned through presence, through consistency, through a quiet, calm certainty in who you are. The Stoics taught that it is not things themselves that disturb us, but our interpretation of them. You interpret being rejected as personal, as proof of your inadequacy. But what if it's not? What if their rejection is just misalignment? What if it's a favor? What if every person who didn't choose you cleared the path for someone who would? Even more powerful, what if you stopped needing to be chosen at all? What if you became the kind of person who walks into a room not wondering if you're liked, but wondering who here is aligned with my values, my mission, my standards? That is the pivot. That is the Stoic move. That is the beginning of true freedom. Break free, choose yourself, and never again ask for permission to matter. Let's pause here. If this chapter resonated with you, I want you to do something different in the comments. No surface level takes. Share the moment in your life when you realized you were craving to be chosen. Was it a relationship, a job, a friend group? Speak on it. There is power in naming it. Or if you're ready to reclaim your power, comment this phrase, I no longer wait to be chosen. I choose myself daily. Say it not just for me, but for yourself. Write it. Mean it. Live it. Let's keep going. There's more strength to unlock. 2. Channel energy into self-worth. Once you stop bleeding energy into the need to be chosen, you're left with something powerful, something unfamiliar for many. Stillness, silence, a void. And this is where many people panic. When the noise of chasing dies down, you're left with no one to impress, no one to validate you, no one to mirror your worth back to you. And it's in that silence that a haunting question echoes, who am I when no one's watching? This question is not to be feared. It is sacred. Because this is the first place self-worth is built. Not in the gaze of others, but in the quiet construction of your character. And here's the truth. Most people don't want to face what you pour your energy into defines you. If your attention, thoughts, emotions, and efforts are all directed toward being seen, being accepted, being wanted, You will always be a satellite orbiting someone else's gravity. But the moment you redirect that energy inward, you become the sun. Self-worth is not a feeling. It is not a momentary high or a pep talk in the mirror. It is a practice, a discipline, a series of choices that accumulate into identity. It looks like this: saying no when it would be easier to say yes just to keep someone around. Going to the gym, even when no one's watching. Holding your ground in a conversation instead of folding to avoid conflict. Getting out of bed to face your responsibilities when your mind whispers that it's pointless. These are not just behaviors, they are declarations. Each act says, I matter enough to hold myself to a higher standard. But let's not pretend this is easy. When you've spent years or even decades outsourcing your worth, turning inward can feel unnatural. You might find that you don't like what you see at first, that your sense of self has become entangled with how others perceive you, that your value has always been reactive, never generated from within. But this is where the Stoic begins his real training. He does not build his sense of self on compliments or validation. He does not crumble when he is unseen. He knows that the most powerful foundation is the one that exists independent of approval. Start with small commitments. Make promises to yourself and keep them. Not grand, sweeping resolutions, but tiny acts of alignment. Do what you say you will do. Say no when it costs you something. Speak honestly even when your voice trembles. With each act, you gather something subtle but strong: self-trust. And self-trust is the cornerstone of self-worth. You cannot believe in your value if you constantly betray yourself. You will find, over time, that the world begins to respond differently. Not because you've become louder, flashier, or more persuasive, but because your energy is no longer desperate. It's certain. You stop asking, am I enough for them, and begin asking, are they enough for what I'm building? And that flips everything. The woman who didn't text back. The friend who stopped inviting you. The employer who overlooked you. These are no longer losses. They become filters. And every time someone exits your life, because you've stopped shrinking for them, you make more room for people who meet you at your level. Stoicism is not a rejection of connection. It's a refinement of it. It's the discipline to choose quality over quantity, principle over popularity, silence over noise. Let others run around screaming for validation. You, instead, walk quietly, carving your character with each step. Pour your energy into self-worth, not self-doubt. Into creation, not craving. And when you become full from within, others will feel it. And more importantly, you will feel it. That's the kind of man or woman the world can't help but notice. But by then, you won't care whether they do. And that is power. 3. Show up for yourself first. If you're still waiting for someone to rescue you, to heal your wounds, to see your light and pull you into your potential, you'll be waiting forever. No one is coming. And paradoxically, that's the most liberating truth of all. Because when you stop waiting for someone else to show up for you, you realize you were always the one. You were always the one meant to hold your own standard, to protect your own energy, to lead yourself into the life you know you're meant to live. But here's the catch. It's easy to show up for others. It feels noble. It feels romantic. It feeds that age-old fantasy. If I just give enough, they'll see my worth. So you pour yourself out. You accommodate. You bend. You rescue. You show up over and over for someone who won't do the same. You think this makes you strong, but often it just makes you unavailable to yourself. Showing up for yourself means recognizing when your loyalty is no longer noble, but self-destructive. It means saying, I matter enough to redirect this love, this time, this effort back into me. What does that look like? It looks like boundaries. Not the reactive kind you put up after being hurt, but the proactive kind you hold before the hurt even begins. It looks like choosing solitude over half-baked connections. It looks like structuring your life in a way that supports your growth. Sleep, food, movement, finances, discipline. Not for aesthetic, but because it reflects a commitment to you. And showing up for yourself first doesn't mean isolating from the world. It means grounding yourself so deeply in your own presence that you no longer enter relationships from lack, but from fullness, from desire, not dependency, from power, not panic. When you stop outsourcing your center, you become deeply unshakable. You are no longer swayed by who stays or who goes, because your house is not built on their foundation. It is built on yours. And make no mistake, others will feel this shift. When you no longer contort yourself to be loved, when you hold your center in the face of silence, when you walk away instead of begging for crumbs, people notice. Some will leave. Good, that's the filter working. Some will step up. Even better, that's alignment in motion. But none of that matters more than this. You showed up for you. So I want to ask you something. And if you're watching this right now, I want you to really think about your answer. What would it look like if, for the next 30 days, you treated yourself as if you were your own responsibility, not your job, not your relationship, not your family, but you? What if your morning routine, your thoughts, your choices, your standards were all designed around your highest self? Not your comfort, not your cravings, your potential. Would you talk to yourself differently? Would you stop chasing what hurts you? Would you finally start what you've been putting off? This is your moment to decide. If you feel the shift beginning, even just a whisper, drop this in the comments. From this day forward, I show up for me. Let that be your line in the sand. Let that be the vow you make to yourself. Not out of ego, but out of love. Because the world will only ever meet you as deeply as you've met yourself. And now it's time to go deeper. 4. Become the opportunity they missed. Rejection is often framed as a wound, a scar, a loss. But that's because we still view ourselves as the lesser one in the equation, as the applicant hoping to be hired, the suitor hoping to be accepted. That frame is flawed. Not only does it make you fragile, it makes you blind. Because when someone fails to choose you, they haven't taken something from you. They've forfeited access to something they didn't recognize the value of. And here's where your shift begins. Not in resentment, but in reinvention. Let's be brutally honest. Most people react to rejection by trying to prove their worth. They double down, post more, work harder, show up louder. They build themselves in the image they think the other person wanted. This is not transformation, it's imitation, and it still places the other person as the central reference point. The Stoic does not move like that. He does not seek to become better than he was rejected for. He seeks to become better than he's ever been. Not for them, but because of them. And this is where you reclaim your narrative. You don't just move on. You elevate. You refine. You become such a strong, clear, magnetic presence that anyone who once overlooked you starts to wonder if they misunderstood what they were looking at. But here's the paradox. You don't do this out of spite. You don't level up with vengeance as your fuel. You do it with focus, with peace, with a quiet, unshakable decision that you are not defined by who walks away, but by how you rise afterward. You want to be the one that got away? Good. But don't chase the label. Chase the process. Start rebuilding your identity from the ground up, not around what they liked, but around what you value. If they were drawn to your sense of humor, but you've been feeling shallow inside, go deeper. If they liked your aesthetic, but your body's breaking down, train it. If they admired your mind, but you've neglected your discipline, fortify it. What makes this stoic is that your growth is no longer conditional. It's not based on whether they notice or come back or validate your evolution. It is based on one standard only. What are you capable of becoming when nothing external affirms you? This is the raw core of self-discipline. Not the flashy kind, but the quiet, consistent kind. The kind that wakes up early, reads the books, keeps the promises, eats with intention, trains without excuses, not because it's seen, because it is sacred. And over time, without bragging, without broadcasting, your transformation becomes impossible to ignore. Your body tightens, your eyes sharpen, your energy quiets and deepens. You walk differently, not to impress, but because you are aligned. You speak less, but with more weight. You stop chasing love, because you realize you are now the opportunity others hope to access. That's not arrogance. That's alignment. That's sovereignty. And it's built in solitude, in repetition, in mastery. They may never say it, but they will feel it. In the space you once filled, in the silence of their what-ifs, in the echo of your absence. And even if they never return, that no longer matters, because you didn't evolve for a reunion. You evolved for redemption, not from their judgment, but from your own past weakness, your own dependency, your own tendency to hand over your power like a gift to those who hadn't earned it. You are no longer that person. Now, you are the standard, not because you say so, but because you've earned it, brick by brick, day by day, choice by choice. Become the opportunity they missed, and do it so well that even you wouldn't recognize the older version of yourself. 5. Eliminate the fear of being alone. There is a fear that runs deeper than rejection, deeper than failure, deeper even than heartbreak. It's the fear of being alone, not momentarily, not socially, but existentially, spiritually. The kind of aloneness that sits in a quiet room at night and whispers, "Is this all there is?" That fear is powerful. It drives people into relationships they shouldn't be in, jobs they shouldn't take, habits they know are destroying them. It's not love they're chasing. It's relief from the terrifying silence of facing themselves. But here's the truth no one wants to hear. If you are terrified of being alone, you are always vulnerable to manipulation, abandonment, and emotional dependency. That fear gives others power over you. Not because they're stronger, but because they represent an escape from solitude. And here is where Stoicism enters with force. Because the Stoics knew something modern culture has forgotten. Being alone is not a punishment. It is a privilege. It is the sacred ground where identity is formed. It is the quiet forge where character is built. It is the classroom where you learn to listen, not to noise, but to yourself. And yet, our culture sedates this silence. Noise is everywhere. Scrolling, swiping, chatting, watching, posting. Constant connection. Constant performance. But all of it is a distraction from the deeper question. Can you sit with your own soul and be at peace with it? If the answer is no, then you are not free. You're dependent on attention, on validation, on someone else's presence to mute your inner dissonance. So the task before you is not to fix loneliness. It is to redefine it. You are not alone because you are unwanted. You are alone because life is inviting you into sovereignty, into the inner temple where all the real work happens. This is where you develop solitude, not isolation. Solitude is chosen. It is noble. It is intentional. And in solitude, you can hear your own thoughts again. You can discern which values are yours and which were inherited. You can finally ask the hard questions. What do I actually believe? What am I doing with my time, my body, my mind? Who am I without distraction? This is not for the faint-hearted, but it is for the free. And here's the reward. Once you eliminate the fear of being alone, you become invincible. No longer do you tolerate disrespect just to avoid being single. No longer do you attach yourself to broken people out of fear of silence. No longer do you attach yourself to broken people out of fear of silence. No longer do you chase shallow connections for temporary comfort. You sit, you reflect, you train, you elevate, and then when someone finally enters your life, they are no longer filling a void. They are sharing in your overflow. That is the relationship worth having, not a rescue mission, a union of sovereigns. But it begins here, not with finding someone, with becoming someone you actually enjoy being with. So I want to challenge you, not lightly, not passively, but with conviction. Take one day this week to disconnect from everyone and everything. No phone, no scrolling, no podcasts, just you, a journal, and your mind. Walk, think, write, confront. Not to fix yourself, but to find yourself again. Then, come back to the comments and answer this. What did you find in the silence? What truth rose up when the noise died down? Or if you're ready to take this journey fully, write this in the comments. I will not fear the silence. I will master it, say it, and live it. Because once you are at peace in solitude, the world can no longer hold you hostage. 6. Act from power, not desperation. There is a certain energy you give off when you're acting from lack. Even if your words are smooth, your posture confident, your timing flawless, if you are rooted in desperation, it will show. Maybe not immediately, but inevitably. And when it does, people pull away. Not because they're cruel, but because humans instinctively recoil from neediness. It triggers a deep subconscious alert. This person wants something from me that I'm not sure I can give. And in that moment, whether it's romantic, social, or professional, the dynamic shifts. You're no longer seen as a peer. You're seen as someone asking for something: attention, validation, reassurance, rescue. And the tragic part? Most of the time, you don't even realize you're doing it. Let's cut deeper here. Because this isn't just about how you act. It's about where your actions are born. Every move you make in life, every word you speak, every gesture you offer, is either rooted in power or in desperation. What does acting from desperation look like? It's sending that message, not because you truly have something to say, but because you're anxious and hope it sparks attention. It's over-explaining yourself in conversations, hoping they'll get you. It's overcompensating, buying gifts too soon, offering too much, asking too little. It's altering your opinions in real time just to stay agreeable. It's constantly scanning the room to see how you're being perceived. It's posting with the silent hope that maybe this time they'll know. These behaviors aren't always loud. In fact, desperation often wears a disguise. It calls itself being nice, being available, being invested. But underneath it all is a fear of being forgotten, overlooked, unloved. A fear that your worth is conditional. A fear that if you don't do enough, you won't be enough. Now contrast that with power. Acting from power is not arrogance. It is not force. It is not domination. It is calm. It is presence. It is the quiet assurance of someone who has nothing to prove and everything to protect. The powerful man or woman doesn't act to receive. They act to express. They are not driven by reaction. They are guided by intention. Let's say you walk into a room. Desperation looks around and asks, will they like me? Power walks in and asks, is this environment aligned with what I value? Desperation sends that text and hopes for a reply. Power sends the message, and whether there's a reply or not, the self remains untouched. Desperation scans constantly for signs, approval, cues to adapt. Power stays grounded in principle, flexible, yes, but never lost in the winds of others' emotions. Here's the crux. Your energy always enters the room before your words do. People can't always articulate what they sense, but they feel it. If you're anchored in self-worth, you don't need to say much. Your very presence speaks for you. But how do you transition from desperation to power? It starts with this realization. You already have everything you need inside of you. The desperation you feel comes not from actual lack, but from disconnection. You've forgotten your own center. You've outsourced your peace to whether someone answers your call, validates your efforts, includes you in their plans. Take it back. The Stoics were clear on this. The only things within your control are your thoughts, your actions, and your choices. Everything else, how others respond, what they feel, what they choose, is external. The desperate person tries to control the uncontrollable. The powerful person masters the internal. And this mastery isn't theoretical. It's practical. It looks like detachment, not in the cold, cynical way, but in the deeply rooted belief that your value is not determined by outcomes. So you train. You train your mind to respond, not react. You train your body to hold tension without collapsing. You train your speech to reflect clarity, not confusion. You train your spirit to sit in uncertainty without reaching out in panic. In time, your emotional hunger becomes spiritual discipline. The ache to be chosen transforms into the fire to choose yourself daily, with precision and grace. And when you reach that place, when your energy is stable, when your standards are held not to impress but to protect, when your presence is felt but never forced, people take notice. But by then, their noticing is irrelevant, because you've stopped acting to be chosen. You've started acting in accordance with your nature, with your mission, with the life you are crafting from the inside out. Now, let me be clear. This doesn't mean you become passive. Power is not passive. Power initiates. Power leads. Power builds. But it builds without neediness, without attachment to outcome, without losing itself to external chaos. And that makes you rare. In a world full of frantic grabbing, your restraint becomes attractive. In a culture obsessed with visibility, your quiet self-assurance becomes magnetic. In a sea of noise, your presence becomes a sanctuary. But none of that matters. As much as this, you will feel different. In your skin, in your decisions, in your solitude, in your relationships. You will feel the difference between being pulled by fear and being led by purpose. You will stop asking, will they like me? And start asking, am I proud of the way I move in this world? That's the Stoic path. That's acting from power. That's liberation. 7. Let them witness your transformation. There is a moment in every Stoic's journey when the silence of solitude gives way to the sound of footsteps. Yours. Steady, calm, grounded, and without saying a word, without needing to prove anything, you begin to be noticed. But this time, not because you chased, not because you performed, not because you adjusted your voice to match theirs or danced for their approval. You're noticed because you've changed, because your presence now speaks a different language. One fluent in self-respect, discipline, and grounded confidence. Let's not sugarcoat this. Some people who ignored you, underestimated you, even discarded you, will return. Not all of them, not always overtly, but many will orbit back into your space. Maybe it's a text after months of silence, a like on something you posted, a casual run-in that suddenly feels heavy. Maybe they won't say it outright, but their eyes will. They'll notice the calm in your face, the posture, the way you no longer seek anything from them, and they will feel the shift. It will unsettle them. But here's what you must understand. The goal was never to make them regret. The goal was to make yourself undeniable. This is not revenge. This is revelation. You have not become bitter. You have become better. You have not become louder. You have become deeper. And now, simply by existing in alignment, you reflect back to them something they didn't see before, or perhaps something they didn't believe you'd have the strength to become. Let them witness your transformation, but do not perform for them. You owe no display. You owe no update. The only thing you owe is to your own potential, the version of yourself that stayed buried beneath fear and need and smallness for too long. Now, some will try to re-enter your life as if nothing happened. Don't meet that moment with resentment. Don't flex. Don't flaunt. That would only reveal your transformation was still about them. Instead, meet that moment with grace and a boundary. Because a person who couldn't recognize your worth before must now face it without access to it. Others will sit quietly, watching from a distance, wondering how you got here, how the same person they once ghosted now carries themselves like a monument. And the answer? Discipline, silence, time, alignment, the refusal to remain small. But perhaps most powerful of all, you no longer need them to see it. You've stopped measuring your progress by who claps. You no longer ask, do they regret it? Do they miss me? Are they watching? You ask, am I living with honor? Am I walking in my values? Does my life reflect the standards I promised myself in private? That is the difference between a man who plays the game and a man who leaves the game entirely, because he realized he was playing beneath his potential. Let them witness your transformation, not as an act of revenge, but as a silent sermon, because your evolution is not a weapon, it's a mirror. and some will see it and elevate themselves. Others will crumble under the weight of their own avoidance. Either way, their reaction is not your concern. But I'll ask you something now, because if you've watched this far, you're not just passively consuming. You're walking the path. So I want to know, what is one transformation you've already begun internally that the world hasn't seen yet? Drop it in the comments. Let this be your first public declaration. Or if you're ready to go deeper, write this: I do not chase attention. I command respect through who I've become. Let it echo through your words, your posture, your silence. And remember, they will notice. But by then, you'll already be far ahead, focused on becoming more, not being seen more. Conclusion. So here we are. You've walked through the fire. You've sat in silence. You've watched yourself untangle from the need to be chosen, from the fear of being alone, from the hunger for validation. And now you stand different, not fixed, not perfect, but centered. And if you've absorbed even a fraction of what we've explored today, then you're no longer the same person who clicked play at the beginning of this video. You now know that your worth cannot be outsourced. That rejection is not a wound. It's a window. That solitude is not loneliness. It's sovereignty. That power does not demand, it radiates. And that the ones who once looked past you will be forced to reckon with your absence when they realize it meant more than your presence ever did. This is not the end of your journey. It's a beginning. One grounded, not in fantasy or performance, but in reality, anchored by Stoic discipline, forged in silence, driven by the quiet decision to no longer settle. And I'll say this plainly, the world doesn't need more people chasing approval. It needs more people becoming whole. So, become that. Quietly, daily, radically. And if you found value here, subscribe to the Everlasting Stoic. Because this is not a trend, it's a movement. And we are only just getting started. Like this video, if it stirred something in you, share it with someone who needs to remember that their power was never in being chosen. It was in choosing themselves all along. I'll leave you with this thought. One the Stoics knew well, he who conquers himself is mightier than he who conquers a city. So go. Conquer, not them, you.